I'm 82. I've been divorced 5 times. Don't judge me. Hear my story. 5 marriages. Yes, I know. Go ahead, raise your eyebrows. I can practically hear them lifting. I've had that look aimed at me since 1963. Trust me, my mother judged me enough for all of you. I didn't collect husbands as a hobby. It just happened. Not all at once, not recklessly, not with some dramatic violin playing in the background. Just life, unfolding the way it does when you're busy trying to do your best. But if you're still here, let me tell you how a girl who believed in forever ended up starting over 5 times. It's late afternoon as I'm telling you this. The sun hits that far wall in my living room around 4:30, same way it has for the last 12 years. I sit in this same armchair most evenings. Tea on the side table, quiet house, no one arguing in the kitchen, no one stomping down the hallway. Peace is a strange thing when you spent most of your life negotiating it. Anyway, let's start at the beginning. I was 22. That's what girls did back then. You found a steady man, preferably one your parents approved of, and you built a life before you had enough time to wonder if you even knew yourself. I met Robert at a 4th of July picnic. He was in uniform, Air Force, clean haircut, strong handshake. My father liked him immediately. That should have been my first clue. I didn't fall in love so much as I fell into safety. He had a plan. He had a paycheck. He talked about buying a house before he talked about buying flowers. I mistook that for depth. We liked the same ice cream flavor, vanilla. I remember telling my friend Carol, "See, we're compatible." She laughed at me later, deservedly. Looking back, I don't think I knew what compatibility meant. I thought it meant agreement, no friction, no conflict, smooth. I didn't realize real compatibility is about values, not toppings. The red flags were small, almost polite. He corrected how I spoke in front of people, told me not to laugh too loud, preferred I ask before making plans with friends. I thought that meant he cared. We married 6 months after we met. Small church, my mother cried. I thought it was joy. It wasn't entirely. The first year was fine, awkward but fine. I was playing house, learning to cook, learning to be Mrs. Robert Hayes. But somewhere in that second year, I started feeling compressed, like the air had thinned. He had a vision of marriage that didn't include much room for me to expand. He wanted routine, control, certainty. I wanted, well, I didn't know what I wanted. That was part of the problem. I didn't know myself yet. I remember the first real argument. I'd taken a bookkeeping course at the community college without asking him first. When I told him, he stared at me like I'd betrayed him. "You don't need that," he said. Need, that word. We grew quieter after that. Not peaceful quiet, careful quiet. By year 3, we weren't fighting much. We just weren't talking honestly either. The breaking point wasn't dramatic. No shattered dishes, no slammed doors. Just a Tuesday night when he told me he expected me to quit the part-time job I'd taken because it wasn't appropriate. I looked at him across that kitchen table and realized I didn't recognize myself anymore, and I didn't want to. Divorce in the early 60s wasn't casual, it was scandalous. My parents were mortified, church friends whispered. My mother asked me, "Can't you try harder?" I had tried. I just hadn't tried to disappear completely. The lawyer's office smelled like stale coffee and floor cleaner. I remember signing those papers with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, not because I doubted the decision, but because I felt like I'd failed at something sacred. I cried for weeks, not for him, for the life I thought I was supposed to have. I told myself I'd never rush again. That lasted about 3 years. I met Daniel at work. By then I was 28, working as an administrative assistant at an insurance firm. He was new, loud laugh, sleeves rolled up, charismatic in a way that made rooms tilt toward him. He noticed me, not in a polite, distant way, in a direct, electric way. After Robert, that felt intoxicating. Daniel didn't want to quiet me. He encouraged my opinions, teased me, challenged me. We'd argue about politics over lunch like it was a sport. The chemistry was undeniable, and I confused chemistry with destiny. We married 2 years later. This one felt like a movie, dancing in the kitchen at midnight, road trips without maps, kissing in parking lots like we were still teenagers. We loved loud. We fought louder. 2 strong personalities in one small house can turn fireworks into wildfires. The red flags were there, but they were dressed up as passion. His jealousy felt flattering at first. His temper felt like intensity. When he accused me of flirting at a party, I laughed it off until the accusations got sharper. I wasn't innocent in that marriage. I pushed back hard. I knew how to wound with words by then. We both did. There was no single betrayal, no dramatic affair revealed on a doorstep, but there were late nights he wouldn't explain, secrets that weren't quite provable, egos that refused to bend. The breaking point came during an argument over nothing, or maybe over everything. We were in the kitchen again. Funny how kitchens witness so much. He slammed his hand on the counter and said, "Why does everything have to be a fight with you?" And I thought, because you never stop fighting me either. We became opponents instead of partners. The divorce was ugly. Papers slammed on tables, lawyers involved earlier than necessary, friends choosing sides like we were running for office. I moved out while he was at work because it was easier than watching him pack my boxes. That one hurt differently, not like failure, like explosion. I remember sitting on the floor of my new apartment, surrounded by half-open boxes, thinking, I did this again. But I also remember something else, relief. After that, I told myself I needed calm. No more fire, no more chaos, no more mistaking sparks for substance. I wanted steady, and eventually, steady found me. All right, you're still here. That says something. Maybe about you, maybe about me, maybe about how none of us are as simple as our statistics. Let's keep going. I met Thomas at a church potluck. See, I told you I was looking for calm. He was standing by the lemonade table, carefully stacking paper cups like they were fine china. Quiet man, neatly pressed shirt, soft-spoken in a way that made you lean in instead of roll your eyes. He'd been widowed 2 years earlier, no children, worked in accounting, reliable as sunrise. He asked if he could call me sometime. No fireworks, no electricity shooting through my spine, just warmth. After Daniel, warmth felt like medicine. We started slow. Sunday dinners, walks around the neighborhood, conversations that didn't end in raised voices. He listened, really listened. If I mentioned liking a certain brand of tea, it would quietly appear in his pantry the next week. I thought, this is what grown-up love feels like. We married when I was 38. The wedding was smaller, less spectacle. My parents were cautiously supportive. My mother stopped asking if I was sure and started asking what I'd wear. Living with Thomas felt like exhaling. Bills paid on time, cars serviced before they broke down, no slammed doors, no jealous interrogations. He was kind, he was decent, he was steady, and for a while that was enough. But something subtle began to happen around year 4. We stopped surprising each other, then we stopped challenging each other, then slowly we stopped really seeing each other. It's hard to explain without sounding ungrateful. Nothing was wrong in a dramatic sense. No betrayal, no shouting, no cruelty, just distance. We stopped arguing. That should have been the warning. Silence can be peaceful, or it can be absence. We became efficient roommates, good at logistics, good at routines, not so good at intimacy. Not physical intimacy, that faded gently, naturally. I mean emotional intimacy. We didn't ask big questions anymore. We didn't dream out loud. I remember sitting across from him on dinner one night, watching him butter his bread with precise movements, and thinking, if I disappeared tomorrow, would he feel my absence or just the disruption? That thought frightened me more than Daniel's temper ever did. The breaking point wasn't explosive. It was quiet and almost tender. We were sitting in the living room, a different one than this, and he said, I think we've been pretending for a while. And I nodded. Sometimes love doesn't die, it just thins out. The divorce was mutual. No lawyers throwing threats, no slamming doors. Just paperwork and a few long conversations about how we'd gotten there. The lawyer's office still smelled like stale coffee. That part never changes. Signing those papers the 3rd time felt surreal. My hand steadier, my heart heavier in a different way. This time, I wasn't heartbroken, I was sad. Sad that calm hadn't been enough. Sad that I still didn't fully understand what I was chasing. We divided things carefully. Furniture, savings, memories. I packed wedding photos into a box and didn't look at them again. Friends were kinder this time. Maybe they were tired of judging me, or maybe I'd stopped caring as much. If you're still listening, maybe you understand that life doesn't always move in straight lines. I was 52. By then, I should have known better. At least that's what everyone assumed. I met Gregory through a mutual friend at a neighborhood barbecue. He was charming, in a polished way, expensive watch, confident handshake, quick compliments. He'd recently moved back to town after a rough few years. That's how he put it. I didn't ask enough questions about those rough years. He admired my independence, said it made me interesting. After Thomas, that attention felt invigorating. We dated less than a year before he proposed. Yes, I know, at 52 you'd think I'd have learned. Apparently not. The red flags were clearer this time. I just didn't want to see them. He criticized how I spent money, even though we kept separate accounts at first. He made little jokes about my past marriages that weren't quite jokes. He liked knowing where I was at all times. I told myself he was protective. There's that word again. Protective can be a disguise for possession. After we married, things shifted quickly. He moved into my house, rearranged furniture without asking, suggested we consolidate finances, invested in ventures I didn't fully understand. He had big plans, big ideas, big risks. I'd spent years craving stability, but apparently I was still drawn to intensity wearing a suit. The arguments started quietly, then they sharpened. He'd snap if dinner wasn't ready when he expected it, accuse me of not supporting his business decisions if I asked questions. He wasn't physically violent, I want to be clear about that, but he had a way of making me feel small in my own kitchen. At 55, that's humiliating to admit. I'd walk into a room and brace myself for criticism. That was new. The breaking point came over money. He'd invested a significant portion of our savings into something that collapsed within months. When I confronted him, he blamed me for not believing in him enough. I remember standing in the hallway, heart pounding, and thinking, I cannot do this again, not at this age, not at this cost. The divorce was exhausting, lawyers involved, financial negotiations that felt like slow bleeding. I had to downsize afterward, sold the house, moved into a smaller place. Embarrassment hit harder than heartbreak. My friends stopped buying wedding gifts at that point. One of them said gently, "We'll just bring wine." I laughed, but underneath, I was tired, really tired. It took me months to untangle the finances, years to untangle the emotional knots. That was the first time I asked myself a brutal question. What am I repeating? Because by then, it couldn't just be bad luck. It took me 5 marriages to realize I was the common denominator. Not the villain, not the sole cause, but present in every story. I was afraid of being alone. There it is. Afraid of the quiet stretching too wide. Afraid of dinners eaten alone forever. Afraid that if no one chose me, maybe I wasn't worth choosing. That fear can make you accept things you'd advise your daughter to run from. Speaking of daughters, mine was grown by then. She'd watched all of it. Marriage 2 and 3 happened during her childhood. She reacted differently each time. Angry during Daniel, withdrawn during Thomas, firmly skeptical during Gregory. When I told her I was filing for divorce the 4th time, she just said, "Mom, please choose better next time." That stung, because she was right. I met Harold when I was 68. Yes, 68. Dating in your late 60s feels like a job interview with snacks. We met at a community center lecture. He sat next to me and whispered a dry joke about the speaker's monotone voice. I nearly snorted. He was a widower, 2 adult sons, soft eyes, slower movements, the kind of man who carried tissues in his pocket for other people. We took our time, no rushing, no dramatic declarations. We talked about health insurance before we talked about vacations, compared medication lists like teenagers once compared music. It was almost funny. This time I wasn't looking for forever. I was looking for peace. We married when I was 71. It felt different, gentler, companion-style love, morning coffee together, doctor appointments side by side, holding hands not because of passion, but because balance is tricky at that age. There was affection, real affection, and gratitude. But age brings its own challenges. Health issues surfaced. His mobility declined faster than we expected. I became more caregiver than partner. Resentment tried to creep in, not at him, but at time. We had difficult conversations about independence, about dignity, about what we each needed. The divorce wasn't explosive, it was practical. Painfully practical. He wanted to move closer to his sons in another state. I didn't want to relocate again at 74. We tried long distance for a year. It felt lonely in a different way. Eventually, we admitted what neither of us wanted to say. Love doesn't always overcome logistics. Signing divorce papers at 75 feels absurd. The clerk looked at me twice. I almost laughed. But I didn't regret that marriage, not for a second. We gave each other companionship during years that can feel invisible. Sometimes that's enough. So here I am, 82, 5 husbands, 5 chapters, same woman. I believed in love every single time. That's not weakness, that's hope. Do I wish I'd learned some lessons sooner? Of course. I confused chemistry with compatibility, mistook control for care, mistook calm for connection, mistook intensity for depth. I stayed too long sometimes, left too late other times. But I never stayed where I was shrinking, and I never left lightly. Taking wedding photos off walls never got easier. Returning duplicate gifts never stopped feeling awkward. Explaining to neighbors never became comfortable. But starting over, that part never scared me as much as staying miserable. Now, in this quiet house, with the late afternoon sun creeping across the carpet, I don't feel ashamed. I don't feel proud either. I feel seasoned. I've sat in lawyers' offices that smelled like stale coffee. I've signed papers with shaking hands. I've danced in kitchens at midnight. I've cried on bathroom floors. I've packed boxes alone. I've unpacked them with hope 5 times. Would I recommend it? No. Would I erase it? Also no. Because every version of me, naive girl, passionate woman, steady wife, exhausted fool, gentle companion, they all led here, to this chair, to this quiet, to this understanding. Don't judge the number, judge the courage it took to start again. And that's my story.